WutheringWaves patch 1.1 has just dropped, and alongside it, characters like Jin C are available, and Changli is on the horizon. Today, however, I'm going to be telling you about the best changes that they made to version 1.1, and why, if you've taken a break, you should come back right now. The first, and in my opinion, the biggest thing that they added to WutheringWaves was more food. Now, before you get your pitchforks out, oh my god, Connor, it only works in the overworld. Formally, you were correct. A lot of the food that you're seeing here do things that only really affect overworld fights or hologram fights. Not that significant, not that important. A 40% attack increase, though kind of impactful, is kind of lackluster when the only thing you're using it for is fighting holograms that are one and done. However, this time around, they actually added a lot more food that we can finally confirm has been revealed. The first, and one of my personal favorites, is the lemon braised pork. Now, if you couldn't tell, having an increased echo drop rate of 20% is absolutely ridiculous, even though it only lasts for 30 minutes. However, if you've already set a path or you're doing this alongside friends, the 30 minutes will go by quickly and the 20% echo drop rate is significant, right? Well, what if I told you that there's a 50% echo drop rate food that does the exact same thing, albeit you can't use it quite as much? Well, in my opinion, these two foods, hands down, are some of the most impactful additions to the game, and it's clear why. Now, as a disclaimer, while most of these foods are not that difficult to make, I mean, you could buy salt from the grocery store, raw meat is not that difficult, and lemongrass is, not too difficult to find either. The real issue lies in having to buy things from the grocery, which costs credits. And as we all know, credits are a super valuable resource in this game. And although we do have a whole new world to explore and kind of gain more credits from, it still hurts when you have to spend any amount of credits on something that isn't like your traces or upgrading your echoes. But that's not actually the biggest problem, because that would actually be the premium incense oil. Now, this is another resource that you can only buy from Mahi's grocery. And while you may be saying to yourself, Connor, that's not that big a deal. I mean, you could just buy from the grocery, right? So long as you have credits, you can afford it, right? Kind of, except for the fact that premium incense oil, if I'm not mistaken, it was about 5,000 to get the premium incense oil, which allows you to make the 20% echo drop rate food. And this premium gold incense oil, which is what you would use to make the 50%, cost 10,000 each, and you can only buy 5. Now, for some of you guys, maybe 100,000 once a week in exchange for being able to farm echoes more efficiently seems like a fair trade-off. However, at the end of the day, if you want to compare what 100,000 credits would do for you otherwise, upgrading one of my skills from level 8 to level 9 costs 70,000 credits. If you want to get a crit damage enhancement, or if you want to upgrade one of the stat bonuses on your character, that also costs 100,000 credits. So if you're willing to give up that amount, the echo food is quite impactful. However, I want to caution you guys before or while you do this, because it is definitely a bit costly, though very insane, because again, you can get double the amount of echoes that you'd normally get. Super insane food. But Connor, you may also be saying, I've got all the echoes in the world that I could ever need. I don't need echo drop rate. Well, fortunately for you, they've also introduced something absolutely ridiculous, which is stuffed tofu, which increases the amount of materials that you get from defeating enemies in the overworld. And this is primarily for the actual drops that the enemies drop. So this doesn't apply to a world boss and getting something like an extra dreamless feather or getting something from crownless. It just refers specifically to what enemies drop when you kill them. So keep that in mind when you see this food. However, what I actually consider to be more insane than that food is chili sauce tofu, which increases the amount of shell credits you get when you defeat enemies in the overworld by 50%. Again, a lot of this needs to be tested. I don't even have the recipe right now for chili sauce tofu, which is why I'm gonna wait before I call it the super food. But 50% more shell credits when you manage to get the resources, or if you end up finding a route where you can continuously fight and get back the cost of your dish, could mean that this dish is actually really crazy. I'll do more testing for this in the future, but just the fact that they're willing to add more exploration or more overworld focused foods, I think is a huge step in the right direction, and I think is a very positive direction that they're taking with the game. Okay, but what if you aren't someone that wants to do a bunch of the optional content? How about your dailies? Well, fortunately, they actually improved and added a couple more options for you if you're deciding to do your dailies. Now, we already have classic options like defeat one overlord enemy, complete a tacit field, but now they also added completing a main quest towards your daily activity progress. Now, this will only apply for a little bit, but in general, they added so many more quests that you can complete to get your total daily activities. And if you weren't aware, when you do end up collecting your daily activity points, you actually are guaranteed a 3-star echo now, which is really nice if you're trying to build someone like Jin C right now, or another damage dealer who needs an element 3 cost. And now, before we get to the next tip, take a look at how big this map is. Now, in essence, it may not be as big as some other video games right now, but walking across this map takes quite a while. And while I might have a majority of these maps completed or explored, going through the process of obtaining exploration 100% was actually a lot harder than you'd expect. And one of the things that have been improved for this patch, that's right, it's the loot mapper. Now, to be clear, this wasn't available at the start of version 1.0 because you had to do a quest or you had to be a little bit further along so you could get it. However, a huge improvement that they ended up doing with it is that it's now huge. Now, to be clear, you don't need to use this if you're just trying to go through the storyline, do your dailies, unload your energy, things like that. However, if you want to unlock new recipes, get more astrite, and just in general, get more rewards for exploring and getting chests, things like that, the loot mapper is going to be your best friend. For what it's worth, the loot mapper formerly was not as intuitive and it felt a little bit clunky to use at times. However, with the size of this new map, this is the perfect opportunity to use the loot mapper. Not only has the radius of these loot mapper circles been increased, but also if you want to replace where your loot mapper is, you can now just immediately replace it and it drops a pin right where you are. You don't have to go through the process of unpinning or removing it and going through extra dialogue. Now, I will say, unlike some other gacha games, exploration in WutheringWaves is actually a lot of fun. Now, I will say, WutheringWaves actually does have a lot of fun in exploration, and this definitely applies to the new area as well. The jump pads, the skiing, all the different activities that you can do, transforming is very fun. So what better way to explore and see what version 1.1 has than by running around, putting down the loot mapper, chasing down chests, and getting free astrite and rewards at the same time. You might have also seen another really nice change that they added to 1.1, and that's a small symbol next to the teleporter. Resonance beacons now have an indicator for whether it's above or below ground, which if you've done all of 1.0, you'll understand to be very, very annoying. Formerly in areas like the Tiger Maw mine, the underground mines, the depths, the area near the Lampy Lumen boss were super annoying. I mean, how do you even know that this is 10 feet underground? But with version 1.1, you don't have to fear or get confused on where any of the teleporters are. It's very straightforward. They tell you immediately where it's going to be. Huge dub for WutheringWaves. And now finally, while a lot of what I mentioned earlier was more exploration or more world-based, there was actually a big change that they added to the actual characters, and that's a new label system, which I think will be so helpful for new players or for those of you that are trying to get your friends into playing the game or be introduced to what's going on. For the new DPS Jin C, as you see, she's being labeled as a main damage dealer, and she primarily focuses on resonance skill damage. And in addition to being able to see what skills or what abilities she has, you can actually now look at what other characters do and if they have some sort of amplification to make Jin C work better. Now, if you take a look at a character like Jian, he is also a main damage dealer, and as you can see, he has heavy attack damage as his main damage source. So if you end up using someone like Mortefi, you see that he has coordinated attacks, he is concerto efficient, and he also has a heavy attack damage amplification, which would go super well with Jian. And as most of you guys know, these two are very good together, specifically for that reason. Take a look at a character like Calcharo, who is also a main damage dealer and resonance liberation damage. And lo and behold, Yinlin, of course, buffs electro damage and also buffs resonance liberation damage as well. And they're a perfect pair. Makes sense. So if you're new to the game, or if you ever feel like you're missing out on options or forgetting what characters can work well with each other, now you have a list of labels and a way to very easily see who pairs well together, or maybe some combinations that you could work together to see if they work well. Now, to be clear, there are some changes here that I haven't mentioned, and that's primarily because I haven't tested them well enough or aren't really sure if they're super good or super bad yet. One of those changes is the targeting, where I've heard mixed opinions about it being good or bad, and some more whale additions that are not really for most of you guys if you're not willing to spend on the game, which is totally fine. That being said, with everything that has come to 1.1, between the databank changes, the new areas, the story, which in my opinion is much better than all the other ones that we've previously gone to, I'm very excited to see what WutheringWaves has next in store. I'm ready to pull for Changli. I have my Jin C. I still have to farm out for her a little bit more, and as a sneak preview for a video that I'm probably going to be doing involving Jin C and some of her best teams, this is what my Jin C currently looks like. Free preview for those of you that made it this far in the video. In any case, guys, thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about version 1.1, if you think it's good, if it's bad, if I missed anything. I hope you learned something. Hope you took something away from today's video. I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night. Woo! Hello, another video down. That means you should watch the next one, because you know what's going to be in the next one? An even better tip or something. Probably version 1.1. I love WutheringWaves 1.1. I have more credits now. Thank you, God. Fog.